It was just sitting there doing nothing, my father said with a casual shrug when I called him from my dorm room, my voice shaking as I asked where my car was. We sold it to help with some bills. You'll understand when you're older. I stared at my phone in disbelief. My name is Sam Rodriguez. I'm 20 years old, and I was a junior studying computer engineering at State University, about 300 miles from my hometown of Millbrook. That Tuesday afternoon call at exactly 2:17 p.m. would be the moment I realized my parents saw me as nothing more than a convenient ATM. What they didn't know was that I had been paying their mortgage for the past 2 years. What they didn't know was that I had been paying their mortgage for the past 2 years. You see, while my classmates were taking out student loans and eating ramen noodles, I had built a small but lucrative web development business. Every month, I quietly transferred $2,847 directly into their account, the exact amount of their mortgage payment. They thought Dad's sporadic construction work was somehow covering it. They had no idea their college kid was the only thing standing. Between them and foreclosure, let me back up and explain how we got here, because the car wasn't just any car. When I turned 16, I didn't get a car handed to me like most kids. Instead, I worked every weekend and summer for 2 years at Murphy's Auto Shop, learning everything from engine repair to bodywork. I saved every penny, $8,740 over those 2 years, to buy a 2018 Honda Civic that had been in a minor accident. The insurance company had totaled it for cosmetic damage, but I knew I could fix it. I spent another 6 months and $1,200 in parts restoring that car to perfection. It wasn't just transportation. It was proof that I could see a problem, make a plan, and execute it flawlessly. That car represented everything I believed about hard work and determination. My parents, Linda and Paul Rodriguez, had always struggled financially. Dad bounced between construction jobs and Mom worked part-time at a local retail store. They weren't bad people, but they lived in a constant state of barely controlled financial chaos. When I left for college, I could see the stress lines deepening around their eyes every time I came home for holidays. That's when I made the decision that would later seem so naive. During my sophomore year, I started my web development business, Focus Digital Solutions. It began with a simple website for a local restaurant, but word spread quickly. By the end of that year, I was making enough to cover my tuition, living expenses, and help my family. I never told them about the business directly. I just started making their mortgage payments, letting them believe their financial situation had somehow improved. I thought I was being noble. I thought I was taking care of family. The morning I drove back to school after Christmas break, I hugged them goodbye and left my car keys on the kitchen counter, like I always did. "Take care of her for me," I said, patting the Honda's roof. "I'll see you both at spring break." Mom smiled and promised they'd start it up every few days to keep the battery charged. Dad nodded and said something about maybe washing it for me while I was gone. Normal family stuff. Nothing that would indicate they were already planning to sell it. For 10 weeks, everything seemed normal. They'd text occasionally asking how school was going. I'd send pictures of campus events and updates about my classes. Every month, I'd transfer their mortgage payment, and they'd thank me for helping out with a little money for groceries. They never mentioned that. Without my transfers, they would have lost the house they'd lived in for 15 years. Then came that phone call. "What do you mean you sold my car?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Sweetie, you weren't using it." Mom's voice joined the conversation. She must have picked up the extension. "It was just taking up space in the driveway, and we had some unexpected expenses." "What kind of expenses?" "The water heater broke," Dad explained, "and your mother needed some dental work. We got $12,000 for it, which was more than enough to cover everything." $12,000. For a car I'd put $9,140 and countless hours into. A car that was worth at least $16,000 in its current condition. They'd practically given it away, and they were proud of themselves for being so practical. "You should have called me," I said quietly. "Why? So you could worry about things you can't control from up there?" Mom's tone had that edge it got when she felt defensive. "We're the adults here, Sam. We made an adult decision." That phrase, "we're the adults here," would echo in my head for the next 3 months. After I hung up, I sat in my dorm room staring at my laptop screen. My roommate, Tyler, was at class, so I had the room to myself to process what had just happened. I wasn't angry yet. I was something else, something colder. I opened my banking app and looked at the automatic transfer I'd set up. $2,147, scheduled to go out in 12 days. I stared at that number for a long time, thinking about every conversation we'd had about money, every time they'd thanked me for sending a little help, every time they'd acted like they were barely keeping their heads above water financially. They'd sold my car without asking because they saw me as a child whose possessions were really theirs to manage, but they'd been taking money from that same child to keep their house for 2 years. You can't have it both ways. I called my bank and canceled the automatic transfer, but I didn't stop there. I started digging into their financial situation with the same methodical approach I used for debugging code. Property records showed they'd refinanced their house 3 times in 10 years, each time pulling out equity for home improvements that never seemed to materialize. Their mortgage was actually $300 per month, not the $2,247 I'd been sending. I'd been covering 92% of their payment, and they'd been scraping together the remaining $253 from Dad's irregular work. Credit reports, which I could access because they'd made me an authorized user on several accounts for emergencies, revealed $31,000 in credit card debt. Most of it recent, most of it for things like a new 65-inch TV, a vacation to Florida, and Mom's dental work that turned out to be cosmetic veneers. They'd been living beyond their means for years, using credit cards to maintain a lifestyle they couldn't afford, while I unknowingly subsidized their housing costs. But here's what really got me. I found the listing where they'd sold my car, posted on Facebook Marketplace with the description, "Selling our son's car to cover emergency expenses. Great condition, must sell quickly." Our son's car, not our car or even a car. They'd posted it as my car while simultaneously telling me they had every right to sell it because I wasn't using it. The buyer had posted a comment asking if anything was wrong with it since the price seemed low. Dad had replied, "Nothing wrong, just need quick cash for medical bills." Medical bills. Dental veneers had become medical bills in the retelling. I screenshotted everything, every transaction, every credit report entry, every Facebook post and comment. Then I started planning. The thing about being a computer engineering major with a successful side business is that you learn to think in systems. Every problem has inputs and outputs, causes and effects. Change the inputs, and you predictably change the outputs. My parents' system was simple. Shame me with their financial struggles, accept my help while maintaining they're the adults making adult decisions, and treat my possessions as theirs whenever convenient. The system worked because I'd been a predictable input, reliable, generous, and conflict avoidant. Time to debug their system. I didn't call them to argue about the car. I didn't demand they buy me a replacement. I didn't even tell them I was upset. When Dad texted me a few days later asking if I was okay since I'd seemed short on the phone, I replied, "Just focused on midterms. Thanks for understanding about the car situation." He responded with a thumbs up emoji. March 15th, their mortgage payment bounced. I know this because I'd set up alerts on the checking account where I used to send money. They'd been counting on that. Deposit so completely that they hadn't even checked their balance before writing the check. Dad called me that evening. "Hey, buddy, I think there might have been a problem with the transfer this month. Our bank is saying the mortgage payment didn't go through." "What transfer?" I asked. Silence. Then, the money you usually send for groceries and stuff. "Oh, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. With tuition going up next year, I need to focus my money on school. Expenses. I figured, since you guys are the adults making adult decisions about finances, you'd have the mortgage handled." Another long silence. "Sam, that money? We were counting on that money. For groceries, right? That's what you always said." "Well, yes, but I'm sure you'll figure it out, Dad. You managed fine before I started helping out." Except they hadn't managed fine before, and we all knew it. April 15th, they missed their second payment. This time, Dad's call was more urgent. "Son, we need to talk. Can you maybe send the usual amount just this once? We're in a bit of a tight spot." "What kind of tight spot?" "The mortgage company is asking for both payments plus fees. It's about $6,400 total." I let that number sit in the silence for a moment. "Dad, that's a lot of money. I thought the monthly payment was just what I was sending, around $2,800. It's a little more than that." "How much more?" "Look, that's not important right now. What's important is we need help, and you're our son." "I am your son," I agreed. "I'm the son whose car you sold without asking. I'm the son you called a child when I questioned your decision. I'm the son who you said wouldn't understand because I'm not an adult." "Sam, that was different." "Was it?" "Because here's what I understand, Dad. I understand that I've been paying most of your mortgage for 2 years. I understand that you spent money on a vacation and a new TV while telling me you needed help with groceries. And I understand that you sold my car that I worked for and restored myself, because you thought I was too much of a kid to have a say in it." I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the line. "But you were right about one thing," I continued. "You are the adults, so I'm sure you'll figure out an adult solution that doesn't involve money from your child." I hung up before he could respond. Mom called an hour. Later, tears in her voice. "Honey, your father told me about your conversation. I think there's been a misunderstanding." "What kind of misunderstanding?" "We never meant to hurt you. The car, we thought you'd understand. We were desperate. Desperate enough to sell my car, but not desperate enough to be honest about where your mortgage money was coming from." She was quiet for a long time. Then, how long have you known? That I was paying your mortgage? I've always known, Mom. I set up the transfers. I've been covering your housing costs since I was 19 years old, and you've been letting me do it while pretending it was grocery money. We were embarrassed, she whispered. Embarrassed enough to lie to me, but not embarrassed enough to stop taking the money. Please, Sam, we can pay you back for the car. We can work something out. With what money? You just told Dad you need $6,400 to catch up on mortgage payments. Where exactly is car money going to come? From? She started crying harder. We're going to lose the house. You were always going to lose the house, Mom. You've been living beyond your means for years. I was just delaying the inevitable, and I didn't even know it. May 17th, they received their foreclosure notice. The mortgage company was starting proceedings to reclaim the house. Dad showed up at my campus unannounced that weekend. I was in the library when campus security called to tell me I had a visitor who was pretty upset and asking for me specifically. I found him in the parking lot, leaning against a truck I didn't recognize. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in 2 months. We need to talk, he said. Okay, talk. Not here. Get in the truck. Whose truck is this? I borrowed it from Jimmy Murphy. My truck got repossessed last week. We drove to a diner off campus and sat across from each other in a red vinyl booth. Dad ordered coffee but didn't drink it. Just wrapped his hands around the mug like he was trying to warm himself. I know you're angry about the car, he started. This isn't about the car, Dad. Then what? I reached into my backpack and pulled out a folder. Inside were printed copies of every transaction I'd made to their account, every credit report entry, every mortgage record I'd found. This is about 2 years of lies, I said, sliding the folder across the table. This is about you taking $68,328 from me while pretending you were barely scraping by. This is about you using my money to subsidize a lifestyle you couldn't afford, then selling my property without permission when you needed more cash. He opened the folder and his face went white as he flipped through the pages. Sam, we never asked you to pay our mortgage. You're right, you asked for grocery money, and I chose to send mortgage money instead, because I thought if I could help with the biggest expense, you'd have breathing room for everything else. I thought I was helping my parents get ahead. You were helping. You were. I was enabling you to dig a deeper hole. Look at the credit card statements, Dad. Look at what you bought while I was sending you almost $3,000 every month. A $4,000 vacation, a $2,200 TV, Mom's $8,000 dental work. You weren't using my money to survive. You were using it to free up credit for luxuries. He stared at the papers for a long time. We thought you were doing well with your computer stuff. We thought you had plenty. I do have plenty. That's not the point. Then what is the point? I leaned back in the booth and really looked at my father. This man who'd taught me to change a tire, who'd come to every little league game, who'd driven me to my first job interview. This man who'd become someone I didn't recognize. The point is, respect, Dad. The point is treating me like a member of this family instead of a resource to be managed. When you sold my car, you sent a clear message. I'm not adult enough to be consulted about my own property, but I'm adult enough to be your secret benefactor. It wasn't supposed to be a secret, but it was. For 2 years it was. And when I stopped sending money, you didn't even admit what it had been for until I forced the conversation. Dad pushed the folder back across the table. So what happens now? You've made your point. We're losing the house. I lost my truck. And your mother cries herself to sleep every night. Is that enough? Punishment for you? Punishment? I stared at him. Dad, I'm not punishing you. I'm just not enabling you anymore. Everything that's happening now is what would have happened 2 years ago if I hadn't been subsidizing your mortgage. Same difference. No, it's not the same. Punishment would be me reporting the car sale as theft, since you sold my property without permission. Punishment would be me demanding you pay back every dollar I sent you with interest. Punishment would be me posting your credit history and spending habits on Facebook like you posted about selling my car. His jaw tightened. You wouldn't do that. You're right, I wouldn't. Because unlike some people, I don't air family business on social media to justify my actions. We sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Dad spoke up. What do you want from us, Sam? I want you to stop lying. To me, to each other, to yourselves. You're 52 years old, Dad. Mom is 49. You've been married for 23 years. It's time to live within your means and take responsibility for your choices instead of expecting your college-age son to fix your problems. And if we do that, if we change, will you help us then? I considered his question carefully. If you sell all the stuff you bought with credit cards, if you get honest jobs and honest budgets, if you downsize to a place you can actually afford, and if you pay me back for my car, then maybe we can talk about what a healthy relationship looks like. Pay you back? Sam, we don't have $12,000. Then you better figure out where you're going to get it. You're the adults, remember? Dad left campus that afternoon without another word between us. By June, they'd lost the house. My sister Rachel, who lived about an hour away, called to tell me they were moving in with her family temporarily. Rachel was furious, not at me surprisingly, but at our parents. I had no idea you've been paying their mortgage, she said during our phone call. Sam, they told everyone they were struggling because Dad's work was slow. They never mentioned they had help from you. Did they tell you about the car? They said you gave them permission to sell it for medical expenses. I laughed, but there wasn't much humor in it. Medical expenses. That's what it became by the time it got to you. What really happened? I told her everything. The real reason for the sale, the credit card debt, the years of subsidizing their lifestyle, all of it. Rachel listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Jesus, Sam, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. It's not your fault. Maybe not, but they're living in my house now, and they're still not being honest about their situation. Mom told my husband that you cut off contact because you're going through a selfish phase. They're making you sound like the bad guy in all this. What do you think? I think you're 20 years old and you've been more responsible than our 50-year-old parents. I think they got comfortable using you and got angry when you stopped allowing it. And I think they're about to find out that lying to me in my own house is a very different situation than lying to their college student son. Rachel was true to her word. 2 weeks later, she called me again. You'll want to hear this, she said. I sat Mom and Dad down last night and told them I knew the truth about the mortgage payments and the car. I gave them a choice. Complete honesty about their financial situation and a concrete plan to pay you back, or they could find somewhere else to live. What did they choose? Well, Dad's working full-time construction now. Real jobs, not just the side work he was doing before. Mom picked up a second job at a grocery store. They've agreed to sell the TV, Mom's jewelry, and Dad's tools that he doesn't need for work. And they've also agreed to pay you $200 a month until your car is paid off. It'll take 5 years, but it's something. I did the math quickly. $200 a month for 5 years was $12,000, exactly what they'd gotten for my car, though not what it was actually worth. Did they agree to that, or did you tell them that's what they were going to do? Rachel laughed. Does it matter? They're in no position to negotiate, Sam. They burned through their savings, destroyed their credit, and lost their housing. The only reason they're not homeless is because I have a spare bedroom and a bigger heart than they probably deserve. What did they say when you told them they had to pay me back? Dad said it wasn't fair because you'd abandoned them when they needed help most. Mom cried and said she was afraid you'd never forgive them. And I told them that fairness would have been asking your permission before selling your car, and that forgiveness isn't something you earn by feeling sorry for yourself. I found myself smiling for the first time in months. You know what, Rachel? You turned out pretty good for someone raised by the same people who raised me. We turned out good despite them, not because of them. Which reminds me, Mom wants to know if she can call you. To say what? She says she wants to apologize and make things right. I thought about it for a moment. Tell her she can call me when she's made the first payment toward my car. Until then, we don't have anything to talk about. Fair enough. But Sam? Yeah? Don't let them drag this out forever. You're in college, you're building a business, you've got your whole life ahead of you. Don't spend the next 10 years waiting for them to become different people. Rachel was right, as usual, but I didn't have to wait 10 years. I didn't even have to wait 10 months. Mom called me in early September, just after I'd started my senior year. I almost didn't answer. I'd been getting periodic calls from both parents that I'd been letting go to voicemail, but something made me pick up. Hi, Sam. I know you said not to call until we made a payment, and, well, we made a payment. I checked my bank account on my laptop while she talked. Sure enough, there was a $200 deposit from 3 days earlier. I see it, I said. Can we talk? Please? I know I have no right to ask, but I miss my son. Something in her voice was different, smaller, more honest. Okay, but not on the phone. If you want to have a real conversation, you need to come here and have it in person. To your school? Yes, this weekend if you can manage it. And Mom, come alone. I'm not ready to talk to Dad yet. She arrived on Saturday morning in a car I didn't recognize, a 10-year-old Toyota that had seen better days. When she hugged me, I realized she'd lost weight, and her clothes were more worn than I remembered. We walked around campus for an hour before finding a quiet spot by the lake where we could sit and talk. I owe you more than an apology, she began. I owe you the truth, and I owe you respect, and I owe you $11,800 plus however much interest you think is fair. It was a good start. The truth is, she continued, your father and I forgot how to be adults somewhere along the way. We got comfortable living beyond our means, comfortable letting you help us without being honest about what kind of help we needed, and comfortable treating you like a child. When it came to your own property, but like a parent when it came to our problems. Why? I asked. Because it was easier than facing reality. It was easier to think of your money as a bonus that let us buy nice things than to think of it as the only thing standing between us and losing our house. It was easier to sell your car and call it an emergency than to admit we'd been making bad choices for years. She was quiet for a moment, looking out over the water. And if I'm being completely honest, she said, part of me was jealous. Jealous? You're 21 years old and you're already more financially responsible than I've ever been. You built a business. You manage your money. You were covering our mortgage while still paying for school. At your age, your father and I were already making the mistakes that led to this mess. I didn't know what to say to that. I was jealous of my own son's success, and instead of being proud of you, I let that jealousy convince me that you owed us something, that your success somehow belonged to the family, not just to you. We talked for 3 more hours. She told me about the fights she'd been having with Dad, about the reality of living with Rachel's family, about the 2 jobs she was working to scrape together my car payments. She told me about selling her wedding ring to help cover their first month's rent for a small apartment they'd finally found. Most importantly, she told me she understood why I'd cut off contact, and she didn't expect me to forgive them just because they'd started making payments. I want my son back, she said as we walked back toward her car. But I want him back honestly, as an adult, with respect going both ways. If that takes 5 years of car payments and years of rebuilding trust, then that's what it takes. What about Dad? Your father is struggling with this more than I am. He's not used to people holding him accountable for his choices. He's not used to consequences he can't talk his way out of. Is he angry at me? He's angry at the situation. He's angry at himself, though he'd never admit it. And yes, he's angry at you for not just letting it go and helping us out of this mess. I nodded. Then he's still not ready to have an honest conversation. No, he's not. But he's working every day, and he's keeping up with his share of the payments, and he's learning what it means to live within his means. Maybe that'll be enough to change his perspective eventually. Maybe. Mom got in her car and rolled down the window. Sam, I'm proud of you. I should have said that years ago, and I should have said it more often. What you've built for yourself, what you've accomplished, I'm proud to be your mother. After she drove away, I sat by the lake for another hour, thinking about everything that had happened. The anger I'd been carrying around for months felt different now, smaller, more manageable. That evening, I called Rachel. How'd it go? She asked. Better than I expected. She was honest, really honest, in a way she's never been before. Good. She's been working hard to get ready for that conversation. I think losing everything scared her into reality. What about Dad? Still convinced he's the victim in all this. Still thinks you should have just sucked it up and kept sending money because that's what family does. He'll come around eventually, or he won't. Either way, that's his choice to make. Yeah. You know what I think? Rachel said. What? I think you handled this exactly right. You didn't let them guilt you into enabling their bad choices, but you also didn't try to destroy them. You just stopped participating in their dysfunction, and you let natural consequences do the rest. It didn't feel right at the time. It felt cruel. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to help them avoid the consequences of their choices. Mom and Dad are both employed now, living within their means, and actually dealing with their problems instead of expecting other people to solve them. That's progress. She was right. It was progress. The payments kept coming every month, $200 on the dot. Sometimes from Mom's account, sometimes from Dad's, sometimes split between both, always exactly on time. I graduated in May with a computer engineering degree and job offers from 3 different companies, Focus Digital. Solutions had grown enough that I was considering turning it into a full-time business instead of taking a traditional job. Dad called me the day after graduation. It was the first time we'd spoken directly in over a year. Heard you graduated, he said. I did. Congratulations. Your mother said you got some job offers? A few. Silence. Then, Sam, I owe you an apology. Okay. I've been thinking about everything that happened, and I was wrong. About the car, about the money, about treating you like a kid while taking advantage of your generosity. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. Thank you. Is that enough for us to try to fix things? I thought about it. Dad, I appreciate the apology, but I need to know that you understand why I did what I did. You were teaching us a lesson. No, I wasn't. I was protecting myself from people who were using me. There's a difference. Another long pause. I guess I need to think about that some more. Yeah, you do, but Dad, I'm glad you called. And I'm glad you're working and taking care of your responsibilities. That matters. We've got about 3.5 years left on your car payments. I know. And then what? Are we good then? I don't know, I said honestly. That depends on who you are in 3.5 years. If you're the same person who sold my car without asking, then no, we're not good. If you're someone who's learned to respect other people's boundaries and live honestly, then maybe we can build something. That's fair. he said quietly. We've talked a few more times since then. Brief conversations, mostly about practical things. Well, but they've been honest conversations. No manipulation, no guilt trips, no attempts to rewrite history. Mom and I have dinner about once a month now. She drives to whatever city I'm in. I took a job with a tech company that lets me travel, and we spend a few hours catching up. She tells me about her work, her friends, the small apartment she and Dad have learned to make feel like home. I tell her about my job, my business, the life I'm building. She's never asked me to resume the mortgage payments. She's never suggested that I should help them buy a house or get a better car or any of the things the old version of my mother would have hinted about. She asks about my life because she's interested in who I am, not what I can do for her. Last month, she told me they'd finally paid off their credit cards. All of them? I asked. Every single one. It took 3 years, but we're debt-free except for your car payments. How does it feel? Scary, she admitted, but good. It's nice to know exactly where we stand financially instead of just hoping the credit card companies don't notice how much we owe. 3 months ago, I started my own company. Focus Digital Solutions is now a full-fledged business with 6 employees and clients across 3 states. I'm 24 years old. I own my own home, and I've built something I'm genuinely proud of. And yes, I bought myself a car, a 2023 Honda Civic, fully loaded, paid for in cash. I sent a picture of it to Mom, and she replied, "It's beautiful, honey. You earned it." I never sent the picture to Dad. The last payment on my old car is due in 18 months. I've been thinking about what I want to say to my parents when that day comes, what kind of relationship I want to have with them going forward. The truth is, I'm not the same person who got that phone call in his dorm room 3 years ago. I'm not the naive kid who thought sending money to his parents was the same as helping them. I've learned that sometimes love means letting people face the consequences of their choices, even when those consequences are painful to watch. I've also learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean going back to the way things were. It means choosing to move forward without carrying the weight of someone else's choices. My parents lost their house because they lived beyond their means for years and made financial decisions based on wishful thinking instead of reality. I didn't cause that. I couldn't have prevented it forever. All I could do was choose whether to enable their dysfunction or step away and let them figure it out. I chose to step away, and it was the right choice. They're better people now than they were 3 years ago. More honest, more responsible, more respectful of boundaries. They're living within their means, paying their debts, and taking care of themselves like the adults they always claimed to be. And I'm better too. I'm no longer the kid who thought it was his job to fix his parents' problems. I'm no longer afraid of disappointing people who were perfectly willing to disappoint me. I've learned the difference between helping someone and enabling them, between family loyalty and family dysfunction. When people ask me if I regret cutting off contact with my parents, if I think I was too harsh, I tell them this. I regret that it was necessary, but I don't regret doing it. Sometimes the only way to save a relationship is to be willing to lose it. The car they sold was just metal and plastic and glass. What they really sold was my trust, my respect, and their relationship with their son. It took them 3 years of consistent actions to start earning those things back. They're not there yet. We may never get all the way back to what we had before, because what we had before was built on their lies and my willingness to accept being used. But we might build something better, something honest. And if we don't, well, I've learned I can live with that too.